Have you ever heard something that no one else did? Not a sound from outside, not a voice from someone near, but something intelligent. Something that knew you were listening. In 1997, deep inside the mist-drenched forests of Oregon, a man walked off the trail and came back. Changed. He couldn't explain it. He just kept whispering the same thing over and over. It spoke to me. It knew who I was. That would have been dismissed as just another tale from someone who'd been too long in the woods, if he'd been the only one. But he WA single quotes T. Within weeks, more reports started surfacing. Campers, hikers, forest rangers, all describing the same experience. A voice, disembodied and yet intimate, calling them by name, saying things it couldn't possibly know. At first, it was barely a whisper, but over time, it grew louder and stranger, as if it was adapting, learning, and it was always the same voice, across counties, over years, in people who never knew each other. Thousands of them. One voice. The government? They didn't hesitate. Mass hallucination, they called it. A viral audio delusion. Nothing to see here. And maybe people would have believed that if they hadn't heard it themselves. Here's where it gets darker. A leaked recording from a park surveillance mic captured the voice. Not just the sound, but the feeling. Cold, penetrating, like it wasn't bouncing off your ears, but crawling into your thoughts. Within 24 hours, the clip was removed from every platform. The account that posted it? Gone. The ranger who leaked it? Found weeks later in a motel room, repeating a phrase in a language no linguist could identify. And yet, the more they tried to bury it, the louder the voice became. Not in volume, but in reach. People started hearing it far from the woods, in cities, in dreams, in places where sound shouldn't travel. Some say the forest was just the amplifier. The source was something older, something buried. This isn't a creepypasta. This isn't a campfire story. This is real. Names were changed. Files were deleted. But patterns don't lie. And when you lay all the reports side by side, what you get isn't noise. It's a signal. And the most disturbing part? Everyone describes the same shift after hearing the voice. Like something inside them had opened. Some felt terrified. Others felt watched. But a few, a growing few, said they felt understood. Like the voice wasn't warning them. It was preparing them. That's when the EcoVault theory started. A classified project to contact non-local consciousness through organic acoustic fields. Basically, using the Earth itself to speak with something out there. Or maybe something beneath us. The project was allegedly abandoned. But what if it wasn't? What if the voice is still transmitting right now, through frequencies we can't detect unless it wants us to? The deeper you look, the less it feels like a story and more like a forgotten part of reality bleeding through the cracks. The kind of thing you were never supposed to notice, until you did. The kind of thing that doesn't knock on your door. It whispers through the trees, through your thoughts, through the static between waking and sleep. So here's the question no one in authority wants to ask out loud. What if they weren't hallucinating at all? And if they weren't, then what is still speaking? So here's the question no one in authority wants to ask out loud. What if they weren't hallucinating at all? And if they weren't, then what is still speaking? If you've made it this far, maybe you've heard something too. Maybe not a voice in the woods, but a whisper in the dark. A moment where the world felt off, like something was watching, through the trees instead of from behind them. If any part of you has ever felt that, leave a comment below. Not just for me, but for others who thought they were alone. Your story might help someone realize they're not going insane. They're remembering. And if this kind of story resonates with you, if you feel that strange chill that lingers even after the sound fades, then take a second to like this video. It might not seem like much, but it tells the algorithm this isn't just noise. It's something worth hearing, worth spreading, worth remembering. And if this is the kind of truth you want to keep uncovering, one layer at a time, one forbidden file at a time, then I'd be honored if you'd subscribe to the channel. This isn't the last time something hidden speaks through the static. And when it does you single quotes LL want to be here to hear it. Now let's go deeper, because the next voice will hear ... It didn't come from the forest. It came from beneath. It started like a hum, low, faint, almost like the trees themselves were exhaling in unison. No one paid attention at first. Why would they? It was just the wind, or maybe an echo off the mountain range. Oregon's forests are known for their eerie silence, the kind that isn't truly silent, but filled with hidden layers of life, breathing just beyond your perception. But this wasn't life. This was something else. Something older than moss, older than the bones buried beneath these woods. Something that wanted to be heard. The first reports came from hikers, experienced ones, the kind who don't scare easily and who know when their own minds are playing tricks. They all described the same thing. A whisper that didn't move with the wind, that didn't come from a direction, that somehow seemed to bloom inside their thoughts. A voice, neither male nor female, calm, patient, calling by name. Their name. That's when it stopped being just creepy. That's when it became undeniable. The local sheriff's department blamed stress, then mushrooms, then collective anxiety. But how do you explain hundreds of calls from different towns, spanning 3 counties, all describing the same thing, down to the exact same phrase? I've been waiting. The voice never shouted, never screamed. It didn't need to. It wasn't threatening. That's what made it worse. It was familiar, and once you heard it, it never truly left. A forest ranger, 47 years old, father of 2, with over 2 decades of service, walked into a fire watch station and locked himself in. He wrote a single sentence on the whiteboard before disappearing into the trees. It said, "It remembers me." They never found him. No footprints, no struggle, just his jacket, hanging on a branch like it had been placed there carefully, almost ceremoniously. Inside the pocket, a cassette tape, no label, no case, just a faint warmth like it had been held tightly for hours. We listened to that tape. The audio was degraded, warped by time or ... something else. But you could hear it, underneath the static, beneath the hiss of the magnetic ribbon. That same voice, whispering, pausing, then whispering again. It was like it knew we were listening, even decades later. We brought in experts in signal analysis, linguistics, even a retired NS, a cryptographer. All of them said the same thing. It's not a language they could recognize. Not a language at all, really. More like ... intention. Emotion, compressed into resonance. A message not for the ears, but for the spine. A woman in Klamath Falls claims the voice cured her insomnia. A teenager in Eugene says it showed him visions of a place where stars fall in reverse. A retired biologist, formerly employed by a now defunct agency we won't name, said he saw the exact same waveform during a classified experiment in 1984, 3,000 miles away from Oregon. That's when the patterns began to emerge. This wasn't local. This wasn't isolated. The forest was just the antenna. The transmission? That came from somewhere else. We found carvings on the trees. Symbols, dozens of them, all identical, etched deep into the bark. Not by hand, not by any tool we know. They weren't burned, weren't chiseled. It's like the wood grew around the shape itself, like the forest was trying to remember something, or relay it. And those who stood near the carvings long enough began to hum, low, faint, matching the frequency of the original voice. That's when we stopped thinking of it as sound. It was more like a presence that needed to be heard. And then, almost overnight, the government stepped in, closed trails, blocked access, said it was due to fire risk, even though Hadn't been a single spark all season. Locals were told to stay quiet. A few were relocated. Some were paid. Others just vanished. And through all of it, the whisper continued, passing from one mind to another like a story that didn't care who told it, as long as it was passed on. But the strangest thing? Every person who heard it said the same final phrase, "I remember." Now, like the voice had unlocked something buried deep, not just in memory, but in identity. Something primal, something not meant for this reality alone. And if what we've uncovered so far is just the beginning, then the voice isn't coming from the forest. It's waking within us. The voice didn't follow the laws of sound, that it didn't echo like it should have in the dense, pine-thick forests of Oregon. It didn't fade with distance, or shift with wind, or bounce off the mountains the way every other sound does out here. It just was, like it belonged to the air itself. And the first people who heard it, they didn't even say they heard it. They said it was placed inside them, that it came from behind the ears, not in front of them, that it vibrated in a part of the brain. They didn't have words for Dot. It started in 1996. No news coverage, no official investigation, just a string of isolated reports scattered across old Usenet forums, dusty radio call-ins, and buried police logs of people wandering out of the forest dazed, tear-streaked, muttering strange phrases. Some were park rangers, others were hikers, but all of them said variations of the same thing. "She spoke to me. She knows I'm here." It wasn't a voice. It was her, not a woman. The woman, the entity, didn't have a name, but people started calling it the Whisperer in the Pines. It was always a woman's voice, soft, melodic, unnervingly calm, never angry, never loud. And yet, it shattered people. Some wept, some vomited. One man reportedly clawed at his own ears, saying he needed to let her out. What's more disturbing is what they said after the encounter. Many would describe her words, not as instructions or threats, but as memories, deeply personal memories. Some that didn't even seem like their own. One teenager said she felt like she was reliving someone else's grief, someone buried centuries ago. A veteran claimed he was shown visions of a war he had no part in. And yet, the pain felt real. Now here's where things spiral. They weren't just hearing this in Oregon. By early 1997, reports of the voice began trickling in from parts of Northern California, Washington, and even British Columbia. And every time, it was always near dense wilderness, always near trees. The same voice, the same woman, the same impossible calm. The government didn't say much, but the National Park Service did something subtle and chilling. They changed the access protocols in certain regions of Oregon. Sections of forest were closed for environmental research or under preservation status, effectively sealing off key hotspots. Hikers who strayed too far from public trails were quietly intercepted. Some reported being followed for hours. One anonymous ranger later admitted, "We weren't watching for bears. We were watching for her." People started noticing other patterns too. Every person who heard the voice described an overwhelming sense of being known. Not observed, not judged, known. Like this thing, this presence, could see every version of them from birth to death in one sweeping glance. Like it remembered them. But how do you explain thousands of people experiencing the exact same hallucination? You don't. That's when fringe researchers got involved. Paranormal investigators, sound theorists, spiritualists. One group ran field tests in the Cascade region, attempting to record ultra-low frequency phenomena. Another planted EMF meters around the old ranger stations where reports clustered the most. What they found didn't make sense. The frequencies were not just in the air, they were inside the devices. And the recordings? Corrupted, not scrambled, not damaged, rewritten. As if something had spoken through the tape. Still, the mainstream kept quiet. Debunkers called it audio pareidolia, the the mind interpreting natural sounds, like wind or rustling leaves, as voices. But no one could explain the physical effects, the nosebleeds, the rapid heart rate, the shared dreams, especially the shared dreams. Whole camping groups waking up screaming the same word. Return. Return where? Return to what? By 1999, something shifted. People stopped reporting the voice as merely external. Some said they started hearing it in their sleep, even back in their home states or countries away from Oregon. Some described it as a song, low and sorrowful, like something mourning the world before it was born. Others claimed she asked questions, strange questions. Do you remember before the body? Did you agree to this shape? One woman, a nurse from Medford, claimed she wrote down an entire page of what the voice said while she was sleepwalking. The handwriting wasn't hers. The language wasn't any known dialect. But when she showed it to a linguist friend, he turned pale and refused to touch it again. He said it resembled pre-Sumerian ideogram symbols, thought to be used before spoken language fully developed. And somehow, it described a return, not of a being, but of a pattern. A consciousness that's always been here, one that doesn't arrive in the traditional sense. It awakens like a season or a tide, and those who walk through the deepest parts of the forest, they're the first to feel it turning. And then it gets worse. What if I told you that this wasn't the first time the voice had been heard? Long before Oregon, before 1996, before we called it the Whisperer in the Pines, before Reddit, before creepypasta forums, before horror podcasts turned these kinds of stories into entertainment, there were people hearing her all over the world. The same calm feminine voice, whispering, humming, remembering. The only difference was, back then, people didn't report it as paranormal. They called it something else. They called it a visitation. In a declassified Soviet-era audio archive, there's a disturbing field report dated 1958. It describes an auditory anomaly encountered by a geological team in the Siberian taiga. The transcript is chilling. One of the scientists, who later died by suicide, had written in his journal, "She sang to me of a place without shape. She asked me if I missed the silence." Another entry? It's not just a voice. It's what comes before language. Fast forward to 1983. A classified NATO surveillance balloon accidentally picked up low-frequency signals over the Black Forest in Germany. When analyzed, the audio file contained a voice that no one on the team could explain. Not just any voice, but one that multiple operatives later said reminded them of their mother, or their daughter, or someone who had died. Different people, different memories. One signal, and the pitch, the frequency, was identical to the anomalous. Readings recorded near Oregon nearly 15 years later. Now think about that for a second. We're not talking about random anomalies. We're talking about a repeating pattern. A shared signal, possibly older than our understanding of sound, reappearing in wildly different places, decades apart. No geographical logic. No meteorological trigger. Just one consistent variable. Dense, natural spaces untouched by artificial noise. She speaks where the earth is still loud. And now, here's where it gets even more uncomfortable. There are records buried deep in linguistic research papers that speak of pre-verbal contact phenomena, cultures that describe hearing intent rather than sound, tribes in the Amazon who spoke of the forest daughter and warned their children not to listen to the wind at dusk, Himalayan monks who practiced silence not just as discipline, but as protection from the songless one who asks you to remember what you've never lived. This voice, this presence, it doesn't follow the rules of time, or memory, or individuality. So when thousands of people across the Pacific Northwest began reporting the same phrases, the same haunting emotional impressions, we weren't witnessing mass hysteria. We were witnessing a signal coming back into range. And, just like a cosmic cycle, it came with warnings. Electrical interference, GPS glitches, animals migrating against instinct, trees bending unnaturally in windless nights. There's even dashcam footage from 2002 of a man driving on a forest road near Crater Lake when his radio suddenly fills with static, and then a woman's voice cuts through, singing an eerie 3-note melody. The man stops the car, gets out, and stands motionless for 4 straight minutes, his hands by his side, his eyes wide open, breathing but completely unresponsive. When he comes to, he asks the same question reported by dozens before him. Was I chosen? But chosen for what? And here's a detail that never made it into the mainstream. Nearly all long-term experiencers, the ones who claim to still hear her even years after their initial contact, report a change in dreams, at first subtle, then overwhelming, recurring imagery, a spiraling forest without a sky, a feeling of being submerged in air, a low hum beneath every interaction, like the universe is holding its breath. And for some, the dreams aren't dreams anymore. One man, a retired biologist from Eugene, insists he disappears for hours at a time, that he wakes up in strange places, with dirt under his fingernails and old songs stuck in his head, songs he never learned, in languages no one speaks. He called it dimensional leakage, said the voice wasn't trying to communicate, it was trying to pull, that it was fishing for minds attuned to a certain frequency, minds that still had cracks wide enough for her to reach through, cracks made by trauma, isolation, longing, people who wandered into the forest not just for hiking, but because they were already drifting on the inside. And that's the part no one wants to talk about, the emotional fingerprint, that this presence doesn't hunt, it invites. It sings to the broken, the quiet, the ones carrying grief like an extra organ. And those people, they don't resist. They walk straight into the trees and they listen, because in a world where nothing truly sees you, her voice knows you. And once you hear it, you can't unhear it. The melody sticks. The questions return. And sometimes on nights when the air feels too still, you feel her just behind the silence, waiting to ask again, are you ready to remember? But remember what? There's a name the locals don't like to speak, not because it's cursed, not because of superstition, but because it's real. And once you say it, it begins to feel like it's listening. They call it the Echo Man. And if you've never heard of him, it's because you've never really listened to the forest, not when it's awake. It started as a half-whispered rumor among old hunters and retired rangers, passed down like a campfire, warning you don't dare laugh at. The story goes like this. When you walk deep into the woods around Mount Hood, not on the trails, but beyond the marked paths, past where the moss seems to grow thicker and the air grows strangely still, you might hear your own voice call back to you, but not in the way you'd expect. It doesn't just repeat, it changes, twists, learns, and then it speaks on its own. One of the first documented cases, though you'd never find it in any official report, was from a park ranger named Lisa Donnelly in the spring of 2004. She'd been with the National Forest Service for over a decade, steady, no nonsense, skeptical of anything she couldn't touch. But something happened during her routine patrol that changed her forever. She was off trail, inspecting damage from a recent storm, when she radioed in a strange interference. Her last transmission. Something's repeating me, but it's not an echo. The signal cut out. She was found hours later, sitting on a rock, barefoot and trembling. No injuries, no signs of trauma, just empty. She wouldn't speak for days. And when she finally did, she whispered just one sentence over and over again. It remembers me. Locals say the Echo Man isn't a man at all. It's something else. Something that feeds on resonance, not just of sound, but of thought, memory, emotion. When you speak, it doesn't just hear you. It learns who you are. And once it does, it starts speaking as you. Sometimes to others, sometimes back to you. It might sound like your father calling your name from the trees, or your child laughing just beyond the ridge, even though you know your child is at home. And sometimes, when you're deep enough in and far enough gone, it uses your voice to lure others. There was an incident in 2011. 3 hikers went missing near Zigzag River. The search team found strange footprints that appeared to double back and circle the same tree over and over again, like someone was lost in a loop. One of the volunteers swore they heard their own voice call out from the darkness, begging them to come closer. "I thought I was losing my mind," he said, "but the thing that broke me, it used my voice to describe something only I could. No, something I never told anyone." He never returned to the forest again. The government? Silent. The official explanation for these incidents is always the same: stress, exhaustion, misidentification of wildlife sounds, and of course, collective hallucination. But those of us who listen deeper know better. There are no official records, but there are patterns, too many of them, and they all lead back to the same coordinates. A patch of forest where compasses fail, GPS glitches, and people report feeling like something is just behind them, watching, mirroring. In fact, a recent group of amateur researchers placed audio recorders in that area for 72 hours. What they captured has never been made public, except for a 13-second clip that leaked online before being removed. In it, you can hear someone speaking softly. But what sent chills down the spines of even the most hardened skeptics is this: the voice begins as a man's whisper, then shifts mid-sentence into a woman's tone, then a child's, all continuing. The same sentence in perfect rhythm. "We hear you. We know you. We are you." Some think it's a consciousness not bound by a single identity. Others believe it's a psychic projection of the forest itself, ancient, intelligent, and tired of being ignored. But whatever it is, it doesn't just want to listen. It wants to become. Have you ever spoken out loud in the woods just to hear the echo? Have you ever paused, just for a moment, wondering if what came back was really your own voice? If so, ask yourself this: what if it wasn't you at all? And what if that voice is still listening? If you've felt this kind of eerie familiarity before, if you've ever heard yourself somewhere you shouldn't, share this in the comments with the words, "It wasn't me." I want to see how many of us have felt that subtle wrongness. How many of us have already been heard? There's something strange about silence in the Oregon forest. It's not peaceful. It's not serene. It's dense. Like something is holding its breath. Like the trees are listening to every step you take and waiting for you to speak. And when you finally do, when you finally call out for someone, anyone, something always answers. But it's not a person, not an echo. It's something older, something watching from just behind the stillness. What I'm about to share isn't a theory. It's a pattern buried in ranger logs, emergency dispatch calls, and a handful of audio clips that were never meant to reach the public. This isn't creepypasta. It's what happens when the truth gets erased over and over again, because it's too consistent to be a coincidence and too terrifying to be acknowledged. Let's go back to 1998. A wildfire swept across part of the Willamette National Forest. Small, contained, but enough to warrant the temporary evacuation of a remote ranger outpost. The ranger stationed there, name classified in every report I've found, left behind his radio equipment. Not unusual. But what's unusual is what was recorded after he left. A ham radio enthusiast from Salem picked up something strange that week. A repeating signal on an emergency frequency, transmitting what sounded like static at first. But when slowed down, layered, and cleaned, a voice emerged. Whispers, fragmented, the same phrase on loop. "We warned you not to listen." Then silence. Then what sounded like a breath, deep, not human. No official agency ever confirmed the source. In fact, within days of the leak, the frequency went dark. The original audio was pulled from every corner of the web, but not before a few copies made it into private archives. I've heard one, and I'll say this: it didn't feel like a warning. It felt like a door closing. Now fast forward. June 2003. A group of botanists doing wildlife impact studies along the Mackenzie River disappeared. 2 women and 1 man. They had satellite phones, radios, a trail log with check-in times. And then, nothing. Vanished. No trace. No signs of struggle. Their tents were still there, untouched, as if they got up and walked out in the middle of boiling coffee. A week later, one of their phones pinged briefly near Terwilliger Hot Springs, over 50 miles away from their camp. Law enforcement brushed it off as a glitch. But here's where it gets weirder. Hikers in that area reported hearing voices in the steam. Full conversations between a man and 2 women, arguing about crossing over and not bringing it back. The description of the voices matched the missing team. Exactly. And then the voices stopped. Now look, if this was a one-time thing, you could file it under folklore, stress-induced hallucinations, whatever the skeptics want to call it. But year after year, the same pattern repeats. People go missing. Then people hear voices. And not just any voices. Voices of the missing. Or worse, their own. In 2015, a Reddit user posted an audio file titled "It's Not Me Talking." It only stayed up for a few hours before the account was deleted, but the thread exploded with hundreds of users claiming they had heard something similar in the woods of Oregon. The clip? A woman's voice, terrified, trembling, speaking in real time, and then suddenly, a second version of her voice starts echoing the same words, milliseconds before she says them, like it knew what she was going to say before she did, like it was already inside her head. Theories flooded in: quantum mirroring, temporal echoes, psychic dissonance fields. But the truth feels simpler and darker. It's not that the forest is haunted, it's that it's occupied, not by spirits, not by cryptids, but by a form of awareness that doesn't need a body. One that listens, absorbs, and eventually speaks back. Not to mimic, but to replace. And here's the part that rattles me the most. Some of the people who have heard the voice have started changing. Not all at once. Subtle things at first. Memory slips. Saying something before realizing they've already said it. Dreaming about places they've never been, and then finding them drawn on paper in their rooms. Speaking in their sleep. And sometimes whispering back to themselves. Responding to their own thoughts as if someone else was there. As if they were becoming 2 people in one. There's a woman named Rebecca Green, a therapist from Eugene, who specializes in trauma recovery. She once treated 3 different clients who had come back from solo trips to the Cascades, all reporting similar symptoms. Voices calling their name in familiar tones, shadows watching them at the edge of their campsite, and a disturbing sense that their reflection was delayed, slightly, just enough to notice. She started documenting their cases. Audio logs, journals. One of her clients vanished. Another checked into a psychiatric facility after claiming his voice had detached from his body. And the third, well, she stopped speaking entirely. Not out of fear, out of obedience. Rebecca left Oregon 3 years ago. No explanation. Just a note to her colleague that read, "We were wrong. It's not mimicking, it's merging." So here's what I'm asking you. How many people have already been touched by this thing and don't even know it? How many of us are walking around, feeling off, struggling with memory, with strange sounds at night, with thoughts that feel foreign? How many of us have already heard it and shrugged it off? If you've ever felt like you're not alone in your own mind, if you've ever caught your reflection watching you just a little too long, leave the words, "Still with me," in the comments. I want to know how deep this thing has gone. I want to see how far it's reached. There's a cabin deep in the Three Sisters wilderness that doesn't appear on any modern map. Old forest surveyors marked the structure in the 1950s, back when the area was first being charted for ecological preservation. The notes from that era describe it as abandoned, built with materials too advanced for the remote location, and sitting at what they called an acoustically distorted clearing. That phrase caught my attention. Not haunted, not sacred, distorted. The cabin itself is built in a perfect octagon, each angle aligned precisely with magnetic north, something that would have required equipment the original surveyors insisted didn't exist in the region at the time. Inside, there's almost nothing. No furniture, no debris, just a smooth stone floor and a single metallic panel embedded in the center, about the size of a human torso. It hums when you speak, not all the time, only when you ask the right kind of question. That detail didn't come from any official record. It came from a man named Daniel Crow, a volunteer firefighter who went missing for 3 days during a rescue operation in 2019. When they found him, he was barefoot, dehydrated, and had walked nearly 18 miles in the wrong direction. But he was calm, too calm. When asked why he strayed from the search area, he simply said, "I wasn't lost. I was learning." Crow was discharged from duty shortly after, but months later, he started posting anonymously on a now-deleted message board used by amateur radio hobbyists and field researchers. He called himself Ecostrata. His posts were filled with strange diagrams, tone maps, and stories about what he called the mirror frequency, a vocal resonance that, once activated, allows a place to remember sound, not just record it, remember it and respond. According to Crow, the cabin was a kind of instrument, a receiver, not for radio waves or satellite signals, but for the subconscious emissions of human presence. He believed certain locations in the Oregon forests had been altered, or maybe grown, to collect and reflect back psychic imprints, not unlike residual hauntings. But unlike ghost stories, these weren't echoes of the dead. They were living impressions, feedback loops that evolved every time someone entered the space. And some of them, he claimed, learned to talk back. His most controversial post included an audio clip, just over a minute long, a conversation between two voices, one clearly his own, and the other ... something else. The second voice was distorted, but familiar. It answered before he finished his sentences. It laughed quietly when he tried to remain logical. And then, at the 52-second mark, it whispered, "You've always belonged to me. You just forgot." The clip was removed within hours. Users who tried to save it claimed the file corrupted itself after playback. Crow never posted again, but his story stuck with me because just a week before he vanished again, he uploaded a GPS coordinate, and that coordinate points directly to the acoustic clearing described in the 1950s. I haven't gone there. Not yet, but others have. One of them is Leah Monroe, a sound engineer from Portland who used to work on field recordings for independent horror films. In 2022, she documented a trip to that very location in a short film that was never publicly released. I spoke with someone who saw it during a private screening. According to them, Leah set up parabolic microphones around the clearing and spoke into the center of the cabin, asking questions to the air. Simple things. What are you? Why do you speak in my voice? And then finally, what do you want? The answer wasn't a sound. It was a distortion in the recording. The audio waveform itself twisted into a pattern, not random, but geometric. A sequence that, when converted into visual form, resembled an eye. Not human, elongated, unblinking, like it was staring from another dimension entirely. Leah left the cabin. She told no one. But 3 days later, she was arrested in downtown Portland for standing motionless in front of a federal building and repeating a single phrase. The watchers have names now. She hasn't spoken since . So here's what I've come to believe. And it's only getting clearer the deeper I go. This isn't just about voices in the woods. It's not about hallucinations or tricks of the mind. It's not even about the forest, Dot. About language, about communication. Something or someone has been trying to teach us how to listen differently, not with our ears, with our perception, with the parts of ourselves that existed before we learned to speak. And the forest, it's just the beginning, Dot. If you've made it this far, leave the word resonance in the comments. Not because it sounds cool, because it's the closest word we have to describe what's awakening, Dot. Imagine being alone in the depths of the Oregon forests. At twilight, when the last rays of sunlight filter weakly through the towering evergreens, casting long shadows over the damp earth. The air is heavy with moisture, thick with the scent of pine and moss. You feel the weight of the silence pressing in on you, but then, faintly at first, a sound, a voice that seems impossibly clear in the stillness. It calls out, not in words you understand, but in something deeper, something that vibrates inside your chest and echoes in your mind. This was not an isolated incident or a product of overactive imaginations. Thousands experienced the same phenomenon, reporting a voice that transcended the ordinary, that seemed to come from another dimension altogether. The government dismissed these experiences as mere hallucinations, a collective delusion triggered by stress or natural phenomena, but the consistency and volume of the reports suggested otherwise. These weren't random whispers in the wind or the cracking of branches underfoot. They were a chorus of the inexplicable, persistent, and undeniable. People described the voice as both terrifying and hypnotic, a sound that could not be ignored, compelling them to listen, to seek, to question. Some felt a strange comfort, as if the voice carried a message meant only for them, while others were left shattered, their reality fractured by the encounter. What's even more chilling is the way the voice seemed to interact with the environment. Witnesses spoke of sudden changes in temperature, inexplicable lights flickering through the foliage, and an overwhelming sense of being watched by unseen eyes. The forest was no longer just a backdrop. It became a participant in this surreal experience, a gateway or a threshold to something beyond human comprehension. The trees, ancient and silent for centuries, seemed to hum with a presence just out of reach, whispering secrets that defied logic or science. One woman described how the voice repeated a phrase in a language she had never heard, yet somehow understood. Another man, a skeptic before the experience, was driven to tears by the sheer intensity of what he heard. These stories ripple through the community, weaving a tapestry of fear and fascination that refuses to be dismissed. The term mass hallucination feels like a shallow excuse when faced with the raw emotion and detail behind each account. Something real, something profound is hidden within these forests, a truth that challenges our understanding of reality itself. This phenomenon taps into deep fears and desires that many of us carry. The fear of the unknown, the longing to connect with something greater, the haunting possibility that we are not alone in the universe in the ways we once thought. It blurs the lines between science fiction and cosmic horror, between what we can explain and what remains stubbornly mysterious. The voice from the Oregon woods is not just a creepy story to share around a campfire. It's a puzzle piece in a larger, darker cosmic puzzle. Dot. As you sit with this, try to imagine the psychological impact on those who experience this firsthand. The confusion, the awe, the creeping dread of realizing that what you thought was your safe, rational world might be just one layer among many. These stories aren't just about external phenomena. They are about internal shifts, about the way our minds and souls respond when confronted with something utterly alien. The encounter changes people, often in ways they cannot fully articulate. And that change, that transformation, might be the most important clue of all. Dot. There are whispers of government involvement too, hints that agencies were aware of these events and sought to suppress them, fearing panic or exposure of deeper secrets. Was the voice a natural phenomenon, or was it artificially induced, a message sent from beyond, or even a warning? The boundary between conspiracy and reality begins to blur here, inviting us to question everything we think we know about perception, consciousness, and the fabric of the universe. And yet, despite all the fear and mystery, a part of the human spirit is drawn to this enigma. The voice calls out not just through the trees, but through our very curiosity, demanding to be heard and understood. It challenges the limits of our imagination, inviting us to step beyond the mundane and glimpse the extraordinary. What happens when you answer that call? What lies beyond the threshold of what we can perceive? There is so much more to uncover, more voices to hear, more truths to confront. This story is far from over, and the forest still waits, silent and watching, ready to reveal its secrets to those brave enough to listen. There's something undeniably unsettling about the idea that the voice heard in the Oregon forests was not just a fleeting phenomenon, but rather an ongoing presence, a thread woven into the fabric of the natural world itself. People who returned to those same woods weeks, months, even years later reported subtle changes. The atmosphere thickened, the silence deepened into a kind of waiting, as if the forest itself held its breath, anticipating something just beyond. The veil of perception. This wasn't a one-time hallucination or an isolated incident. It was the beginning of a strange, unfolding relationship between humanity and something ancient, alien, and profoundly mysterious. What makes this voice so compelling is how it seems to defy time and space, slipping through cracks in reality that science can't explain. Witnesses described how the voice appeared to respond to their fears, hopes, even their unspoken questions, creating a feedback loop that felt intensely personal yet eerily collective. Imagine hearing a voice that knows your deepest secrets, your darkest doubts, that somehow reaches inside your mind and stirs something primal, something forgotten. This is not just sci-fi horror or creepypasta fodder. It's an intimate encounter with a force that challenges the very boundaries of consciousness and reality. Scientists and skeptics have tried to rationalize these experiences. Some suggest natural explanations, infrasound vibrations from the Earth, rare atmospheric conditions, or psychological phenomena like mass suggestion and pareidolia. But the sheer volume of consistent reports, combined with the visceral emotional impact on those who experience the voice, pushes these explanations to their limits. Something else is at play here, something that intersects with cosmic horror, sci-fi mystery, and the darkest corners of the human psyche. It's also important to consider how this phenomenon connects with the broader world of paranormal and supernatural encounters. The Oregon voice shares eerie similarities with other voices reported across the globe, from the mysterious signals picked up by deep space telescopes to inexplicable whispers in remote locations long considered sacred or cursed. Are we tapping into a hidden dimension, a layer of existence where consciousness and the physical world blur? Or is this a warning, a message encoded in sound, waiting for humanity to decipher before it's too late? There's a deep emotional core to this story that resonates with so many. The fear of losing control, of confronting something too vast and unknowable, is universal. Yet alongside that fear, there's a strange allure, a hope that maybe these voices are reaching out to guide us, to connect us to a larger cosmic truth. This duality, terror mixed with wonder, is what makes the story so compelling and why it continues to haunt the collective imagination many who've encountered. The voice in Oregon describe lasting changes in their perception of reality. Some report heightened intuition, a sense of being watched or protected, while others speak of nightmares, anxiety, and an overwhelming urge to uncover hidden knowledge. These personal transformations blur the line between horror and revelation, forcing us to ask, is this voice a curse or a gift? And what does it mean for our understanding of the universe and our place within it? As you reflect on these questions, consider how the voice challenges not just those who heard it, but all of us who are drawn to the unknown. It confronts our need for certainty and dares us to embrace mystery. The forests of Oregon become more than a location. They symbolize the threshold between known and unknown, the tangible and the spectral, the human and the cosmic. There's so much more lurking beneath the surface, more voices yet to be heard, more truths waiting in the shadows of those ancient trees. The story unfolds deeper than most dare to imagine, and the next revelations might change everything you thought you knew about reality itself. The sense that something unseen has always been there, watching and listening, is perhaps the most chilling revelation of all. In the Oregon forests, it wasn't just that a strange voice appeared one day and vanished. It was that it seemed to emerge from the very fabric of the world around us. People who ventured into those woods began to suspect that this was not a visitation from out there, but rather an awakening of something ancient, something that had been here all along, hidden in plain sight. This idea, they didn't come to us. They were here the whole time, turns our understanding of reality upside down. Instead of mysterious entities arriving from distant galaxies or alternate dimensions, we are confronted with the possibility that these beings exist intertwined with the natural world, living alongside us unseen. It's as if the forests themselves are alive, conscious, and harboring secrets beyond human comprehension. The familiar landscape suddenly feels alien, charged with a hidden intelligence that observes without being seen. Witnesses describe moments when the voice was accompanied by subtle shifts in the environment, the wind whispering in unnatural patterns, trees seeming to bend or pulse with a slow rhythm, shadows stretching and contracting against the fading light. These sensations create an unsettling atmosphere where the boundaries between reality and imagination blur. It's no wonder the government dismissed these reports as collective hallucinations. They challenged the very framework of what we consider possible. But those who experienced it firsthand know better. This isn't just a story of spectral voices or unexplained sounds. It's about the erosion of the boundary between the mundane and the extraordinary, where the unknown seeps into everyday life. It's the feeling that the world is far stranger than we've been led to believe, that the forests of Oregon are. Not merely trees and wildlife, but a living interface with something beyond human perception. This hidden presence reshapes the way people perceive their own existence. Suddenly, the notion of being alone in the universe feels hollow. If these beings have been here all along, silently observing and occasionally communicating, then what else have we been blind to? The idea evokes cosmic horror, the realization that the universe is vast, indifferent, and populated by entities whose motives and nature are beyond our understanding. At the same time, this awareness awakens a profound existential curiosity. If we are not alone in our own world, what does that mean for the future of humanity? Could this presence be a guardian, a guide, or something more sinister? The answers remain elusive, but the questions pull us deeper into the mystery. The voice in the Oregon forests challenges us to reconsider everything, from the way we define consciousness to how we interpret the signs and signals that brush against our awareness. It forces us to ask difficult questions about the nature of reality and our place within it. Is the voice a bridge between dimensions, a call from a parallel existence, or a manifestation of the earth itself responding to our presence? As this realization sinks in, it's hard not to feel a mix of awe and dread. The forest is no longer just a place of quiet and solitude. It's a threshold to a hidden reality, a reminder that beneath the surface of our daily lives lies a vast unknown waiting to be discovered. The story continues to unfold, with each new encounter revealing more layers of this eerie phenomenon. And the more we learn, the more questions arise, questions that lead us to the edge of what we understand about existence, consciousness, and the unknown forces that surround us. Have you ever felt it? That subtle shift inside you? A whisper beneath your thoughts, like a distant echo stirring something deep in your soul? It's almost imperceptible at first, a flutter of unease, a flicker of curiosity, but as time goes on, it grows into a sensation impossible to ignore. Many who heard the voice in the Oregon forests report this same inner change. It's as if something has awakened inside them, something ancient and unknown, tugging at the edges of their consciousness. This is not just a story about strange voices or mysterious phenomena. It's about how these experiences ripple through the human psyche, challenging everything we believe about ourselves and the world we live in. People describe feeling different, more sensitive to the unseen, more aware of energies around them, as if a veil between dimensions has been pulled aside. Some say their dreams became vivid and prophetic, while others found themselves questioning reality itself, caught between fear and wonder. You might wonder, is this just the mind playing tricks? But those who live through it insist otherwise. This sensation is raw and real, a transformation they cannot explain but cannot deny. It's the feeling that something profound is changing inside us, a shift that goes beyond the physical, touching on the spiritual, the cosmic, and the mysterious forces that intertwine with our existence. And here's the haunting part. Many who experience this change say it cannot be undone. Once you hear the voice, once you sense that something else is there, waiting, watching, it becomes part of you. It's as if the forests of Oregon didn't just whisper to a select few. They left a mark, a legacy imprinted on the very fabric of those souls who dared to listen. This transformation raises uncomfortable questions. Are we evolving, becoming something new? Or are we being drawn into a reality that was always hidden? A truth too vast and terrifying to face. What is this inner voice trying to tell us? Is it a warning, a guide, or simply an echo of the universe's endless mysteries? As you watch this unfold, it's impossible not to feel a connection, a shared experience that binds those who have heard the voice and those who seek answers. Maybe you felt it too, that inexplicable pull, or the shadow of a thought that doesn't belong to you. Maybe you've wondered if there's more to this world than what meets the eye. The truth is, this is just the beginning. What's happening inside us mirrors the enigma outside, blurring the lines between what's real and what's beyond. The forests of Oregon may hold the voice, but that voice now lives inside us all, calling us to listen, to question, and to confront the unknown. So, have you felt it? That stirring beneath your skin? The silent echo of something vast and unseen? If you have, you're not alone. Share a word, a feeling, or a symbol that comes to mind after hearing this. Your insight could illuminate the mystery for others who are just beginning to hear the call. If this story stirred something deep inside you, if you felt that whisper, that pull, or even just reached this far, then you need to be part of this journey. Hit that subscribe button now, because this channel is your gateway to uncovering hidden truths, strange voices, and mysteries that refuse to stay silent. Don't miss what's coming next. There's so much more waiting to be revealed. Before you go, drop a comment below with the words, "I receive," if this message resonated with you. If you felt that shift or sensed the unseen, your words are powerful, and they connect us all in this shared experience. If you found yourself drawn in, please leave a like. It really helps this story reach others who might need to hear it too. And don't forget, the next video is right here on your screen, ready to take you even deeper into the unknown. Click it now, and let's continue uncovering the voices and secrets that hide just beyond the edge of our reality.